welcome to another video. So I'm here today with my spring reading wrap-up, which is all of the books that I read throughout the months of March, April, and May. There are 11 books total with an average of 3.8 stars. So I feel like my spring started with some fairly strong grades, and then as things got busy, I started to not really feel a lot of the books that I was reading, and so then my reading kind of slumped for a bit, and now hopefully with the summer things will pick back up. But let's get into this. So one of the first books that I read in the spring was A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. So this book I rated 4 stars. So this book primarily followed Nesta after the events of the original A Court of Thorns and Roses series. I don't think I've made it any secret that I found the conclusion of that series pretty disappointing, but nevertheless, I was intrigued by where some of this follow-up could lead, especially for Nesta and kind of where her story was going next. She was a pretty interesting character in the original series, so I was interested in that. And this book was touch and go for me. I found that I enjoyed Nesta and some of the relationships that she developed over the course of the book, but I was underwhelmed by the main plot. The conflict was just, the stakes felt super low and contrived, and then the secondary plot with Heir, I did not care for. It didn't seem important. It felt kind of forced in there, and I have felt nothing. I didn't care. Especially because I knew that Sarah J. Maas pulls her punches, so any kind of threat just didn't feel serious or impactful because of some of the conclusions at the end of the previous series. So I wasn't into that. I found the romance interesting, except for when the characters were being stupid. Some of the communication between the two was it just irritated me. But all around, the friendships with Gwen and Emery, I particularly enjoyed, and some of the things surrounding the lore of the Valkyrie and things like that we get introduced to in this book, I particularly enjoyed. So all around, it was a fun read, even if there were things that frustrated me, and it pulled me in, again, even if there were things that frustrated me. So 4 stars overall, and I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was bad. Alright, then the next book I read was Winter's Heart by Robert Jordan. So this book I gave 4 stars. It was pretty good. It is the 9th book in the Wheel of Time series, so there's not much that can be said that would not give away things for the series, but I do have a whole reading vlog up for this book. So if you have any questions or you want to know more of my thoughts as I was reading this book, you can definitely check out that video. The next book that I read was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. I actually have the paperback version of, so I can hold it up while talking. I've been reading ebooks thus far. I do own the whole Court of Thorns, the whole Throne of Glass series in paperback, and I'm truly hoping I won't have regrets like I kind of do with the fact that I have all of the Court of Thorns and Roses books right now. But I read The Assassin's Blade and I gave this one 5 stars. I loved it. It was a little rough at the beginning for me to get into the first short story or 2. Some background on this is a short story prequel novella collection that takes place before the events of Throne of Glass and follows Selena as she is in, or Kaylynn, I don't know how to pronounce her name. I think it's Selena, as she is part of this Assassin's Guild, and it was good. The first couple of stories I thought were a little boring, but as you read more of them, there is a romance thread that is weaved throughout all 5 or 6 of the stories, and it really pulls you in. Like, the stakes rise as the book goes on, and even though these were a set of distinct stories that could be read on their own as a collection, they also held some intense character development and themes, and like, it was good. I liked it a lot, so I did give this 5 stars. I read it in publication order, I believe, so before the 3rd book in Throne of Glass, not as a prequel. You could read it like first, you could read it last. There are lots of opinions and thoughts out there about when to read this book. Ultimately, that was when I chose to read it. The next book I read in the spring was Shielded by Kaylynn Flanders. I wanted to like this book, and I did not. So this is a Fairy Loot edition. It has a different cover and some sprayed edges. I read it because I owned it through Fairy Loot, and I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I was very bored for much of this book. I managed to finish it, but it was a rough one. I read it over spring break. I had nothing to do. I sat down and I powered through because I wanted to finish it. I thought things would like pick up, maybe even if the beginning got kind of boring, because the beginning, the first like couple of chapters, maybe the first 50 pages or so, I was invested. I liked the information I was getting about the world, about the main character, about some of her powers, the things about her family, like the brother in this book I really like. He was my favorite character. We rarely see him, but I thought that he was well built. And then things just lag. The character spends a lot of time by herself. I'm not interested in her inner monologue, which was kind of simplistic and boring, and the world building, I found it to be boring. I don't know, I just wasn't interested. I thought that this had so much potential. The main character had potential, like her personality is very interesting, but then at the end of the day, I didn't feel like the magic in this world was very well explored, at least not in this installment. I did not like the romance thread that appeared in here. It felt forced. The characters lacked chemistry. The villain was boring. I just didn't, I just could not connect with this book. I wasn't a fan. So I gave it 2 out of 5 stars because I was able to finish it, which honestly is kind of funny because I feel like the books I DNF are technically 1-star books, but I don't rate them because I don't finish them. So I don't know. This one needed 2 stars because I was able to get through it, but it was not enjoyable. It was not an enjoyable process. I also didn't like how, when it comes to the main conflict, as the characters are exploring some history and things, they don't do anything. Like, so much of this book was the characters researching and then just finding the answers in books people haven't looked at in a really long time, and that is boring. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't do anything. They didn't have to puzzle something out, figure it out. It just kind of eventually got told to them as they did enough research, and that just wasn't the story I was looking for. So yeah, was not a fan. The next book I read in spring really surprised me. So it was Lord and Lady Spy by Shana Galen, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So this is a classic romance. It was not classic in the sense of like English literature classic, but like just a straight romance, which I don't typically read a ton. I read a lot of fantasy. I love fantasy romance, but just romance I don't usually delve into. But this is a historical romance. It takes place in like the Napoleonic Wars, or like right after them, and it's called Lord and Lady Spy because it involves this like Mr. and Mrs. Smith plot where you have a married couple and they are both spies, but neither knows it until their work intersects, and you know, stuff happens and unfolds after that. And I liked it. I liked the chemistry between the characters. I thought the romance was done well. I didn't like the main plot. I mean, I didn't even care about the main plot. Honestly, it didn't feel like the characters cared about the main plot. There's like a mystery. They're trying to solve a murder, I believe, but the stakes for that murder just felt low. Like, I didn't care. Nevertheless, I liked the interactions between the 2 main characters. So I thought it was like, it surprised me a lot. I did not think I was going to like it. I was trying it out. I thought that I would DNF it shortly, but I enjoyed the writing style. It was easy to read. It was a quick read. It was enjoyable, entertaining. It was what I needed at the time. It was a good thing. I read it in like 2 days, and it was a fun time. So that was Lord and Lady Spy, 4 stars. The next book I read was Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. This book surprised me. I don't think I made it a secret last spring when I was reading Chain of Gold, and I was not a fan for much of the book. It was hard for me to get into it. I was bored for a lot of it. I didn't care about the characters, and honestly, I'm curious to see where the series goes, because I feel like every series in the Shadowhunter verse does something to evolve the world of the Shadowhunters, the politics of the Shadowhunters, the magic, and all of that. And so far, this series has not felt like it's done that. Like, it just follows the Children of the Infernal Devices series, and it just doesn't build off of that. Like, it feels way more, it doesn't feel essential to the universe really right now. That being said, maybe it will. I don't know yet. I haven't seen it. But this surprised me because I came to enjoy it. So I went in kind of skeptical, and then as the series went on, I actually started to care about these characters that I did not really care about during Chain of Gold, and I was really enjoying this for a long time. And then the ending happened. Like, the ending knocked off a whole star. I feel like things were going super well. The relationships amongst the characters were developing. They were getting more interesting. We were learning things about them, and I was invested. And then the ending happened, and it was this annoying, like, miscommunication, contrived conflict introduced at the very end, and I did not like it. It felt dumb. It was the world's worst and dumbest misunderstanding, and I just didn't like it. So we'll see in the third book if it was worth it. And if you can hear that in the background because I don't edit it out properly, my boyfriend's trying to call our cat, who is actually in my workroom right now, so maybe she'll go and I'll stop calling. We're trying to train her to respond to her name, which is Sir Cat. So we'll see. She is sleepy and I don't think she's gonna come. But anyway, Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. The next book I read was Crossroads of Twilight by Robert Jordan. She walked over here. I'm not calling you. I don't have a treat. Ooh. This is my cat. Super cute. This is the 10th book in the Wheel of Time series. I have a whole vlog on it. It is probably the most infamously sloggy book in the series, so it was an interesting time to get through. I think my overall expectations for it were appropriately calibrated, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Like, it wasn't the worst. It was slow, as they say, but like, it was alright. My biggest critique of that one is that there's a ton of description. I mean, sometimes it feels like a superfluous amount of description, but it wasn't bad. I once again have a whole vlog on Crossroads of Twilight, part of my Wheel of Time series. You can go check it out if you want to know more about my thoughts on that particular book. The next book I read was another historical romance, also taking place in the like Napoleonic era, and it was called To Steal a Heart by Casey Bateman, and I gave it 3 stars. I did not love it. They were like alternating POVs. We got like the main female protagonist and then the main male protagonist, and I did not care for the main female protagonist's point of view. Just didn't find her interesting. She was like a collection of traits that I think someone would think should be interesting, but then they were smashed together so awkwardly it didn't feel interesting at all. It just felt forced. And then the male protagonist point of view I actually enjoyed more because he had a more interesting development over the course of the story, from like using the main female protagonist just as a means to an end for this business deal he was working on towards actually developing feelings for her. I found that interesting, and then we only got his point of view like 2 or 3 times throughout the whole book, so that's what I found disappointing. And yeah, also another one where like the main conflict was almost non-existent, which I don't think it's not a bad thing, right? Like, it's a romance book, so the focus is on the romance, and then the espionage action plot happening in the background was secondary. That's not why it's 3 stars. It's 3 stars because I did not like the main female protagonist's point of view. So that was To Steal a Heart by Casey Bateman. The next book I read was This Golden Flame by Emily Victoria. This one I read in a weekend, which when I'm working is a big deal because during the school year I've got a lot going on, right? Grading, planning. I do not read fast. It is a good week if I can finish 1 book. So the fact that I finished this in a weekend was just testament to how much I loved it. So I gave this 5 stars. It was good. I was skeptical at first because the writing style is a little simplistic, kind of juvenile, but at the same time, the characters are so lovable. Like, oh my god, every single character in this book I love. I just wanted the best for them. They were so cute. I loved their relationships and the friendships that developed. It was good. So it takes place in this like Greekish influenced kind of society where the main character is working at this like island of researchers, and in this world there are these huge automatons that like a century ago suddenly turned off and stopped working, and no one has been able to figure out how to get them to work since, or really understand why they stopped working in the first place. And the kind of inciting incident in this book is that the main character accidentally turns one on, and he is unusual in that the automatons are usually very huge. They're known for being able to like defend and protect these islands. They were big during wars and things like that. But this automaton that she finds is small, human-sized, and more articulate than any previous automaton she has ever read about. And things kind of spiral from there, and it was very interesting, and I really liked it. So good. It's a standalone as well, and I found that it ended fairly well. Everything didn't get wrapped up with a perfect bow. There are some things left open-ended, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm really looking forward to more of Emily Victoria's work. I think this was her first novel. I could be wrong, but I think so. This is another fairy loot read, so that's why it's got like a slightly different cover than the original version with the red sprayed edges. And the artwork on the inside is cool. Actually, I should show it to you. So it has this foiled embossing, and then the artwork is this like red and fuchsia illustration of the main characters. It's nice. I really like it. Alright, so that was that. The next book I read in the spring was Heir by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the Throne of Glass series, and I gave it 4 stars. It kept me going. The main plot that Kaylynn is going on, as well as the stuff that Dorian and Chow are doing, like all of that was interesting. But I knocked off a star honestly because parts of this, the world building in here was disorienting. I feel like the first couple of books you had a certain world established, and then as Kaylynn dives deeper into the plot and explores more of the world and some things that have happened to her, you get snippets of this greater magical world that's happening. And in this book, it was disorientingly thrown at you. Like, Kaylynn goes out to meet this person that I didn't even know existed. At this point, she finds her easier than I expected. There's a whole point of view with a completely different kind of supernatural species introduced in here that I was not expecting, and felt only tangentially related to anything or anyone we had previously seen. Like, this felt like a book from a different series. It was weird. The shift here felt abrupt and disorienting, and so I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, but it was jarring, and that's why it wasn't 5 stars. I'm also kind of afraid that you're developing a romance that I don't want to happen. So we'll see where this goes. I am interested in continuing the series. It has not disappointed me nearly as much as some of the things in A Core of Thorns and Roses. So I'm hopeful, but it is a hesitant hope. And then the last book I read in the spring was New Spring by Robert Jordan. So this is a prequel to the Wheel of Time series, and I gave it 4 stars. It primarily follows the character Maureen, and it was a good time. I learned a lot more about the Aes Sedai and how their world and the Tower and their politics works, I think, than I have so far gained in the main series, because the Aes Sedai was a main character. And it was good. I did not read it first though, so it's technically a prequel. I read it after the 10th book, and so my vlog review for that does include spoilers for those first 10 books, because I read it in publication order, not in like order. So keep that in mind if you go check out that vlog, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Those were the 11 books that I read this spring. I did a lot of work on my spring TBR. So A Court of Silver Flames, Winter's Heart, The Assassin's Blade, Shielded, Chain of Iron, Crossroads of Twilight, and New Spring were all on my original spring TBR video. There are 6 books that I did not get to. So I got through like about half of my spring TBR, which is like, it's pretty good. I didn't expect that, especially since there were 4 books I read that weren't on that original TBR. I just deviated based on what I was feeling. Things I did not get to include Forest of Souls, which I'm not going to migrate that to my next TBR. I'm just going to shelve it for a bit. Queen of Empire, another one that I'm just shelving for a bit. Haven't really been feeling it. It's been on a couple of seasonal TBR lists already, and it's not what I'm looking to pick up soon. Brave Not Perfect, which I am currently reading and might even finish today, so that will probably be my first book read in the summer. From Blood and Ash, which I am still interested in reading and will be migrating. The Gilded Ones, which I'm also still interested in reading and will be migrating. And then Star Daughter. So Star Daughter was a DNF. I started it. I got about this far and I didn't like it. I'm not feeling it. I could not. The blurb is super interesting. The premise is interesting. The writing style and the main character just, they feel a little young for me, which isn't necessarily bad. This is a YA novel and the main character is it's like a younger YA. She's like 15 and she acts 15 and like that's fine. It just wasn't something I felt like reading at this time. So I DNF'd it for now. I do think I will try to pick it up again later, maybe even later in the summer, but not in the spring. I wasn't feeling it. So I might try it again some other time. And that is how my spring went. So overall, it started off strong, fizzled out towards the end as work got pretty wild and like the school year was wrapping up, but I'm very excited for what the summer will bring, and I did find some very good favorites this reading season. So definitely let me know down in the comments below what you read this spring, any favorites, anything that surprised you, because I feel like I was very surprised this season. There were like 4 books I didn't expect to like that I did. So that's it for this video. If you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you next time. Bye.